Okay, here's where we are in the process of making this guitar string knife. So we've got a really big billet, and what I think I've decided I'm going to do is I should be able to get one of my gyutos out of this, and also one of my bunkas. And I may even possibly be able to get one of my petty bunkas or my mini bunka. But it all depends on how these kind of line up on the billet, because I don't have too much more space down here. So we'll see what we can do. So if you watched the last video, you know that I can't use this entire billet because there's still canister and weld on the edge. So I've got to keep everything into the center. So basically I've got to decide where I can use this and not have mild steel in the blade anywhere. I can have this mild steel all day long in the tang, but I don't want it anywhere in here. It could be up on the spine side, anywhere but the edge, but then that's just gonna disrupt the pattern, and it's not gonna be a knife that I would want to sell anyone. So I just need to fart around with where I can put this and then go from there. So I may be able to orient things like this. That'll be really hard to cut out in there. And then, no, I don't think it's gonna work. I mean, maybe if I wanted to weld a tang on there, I don't know. Yeah, these will just be really hard to cut out. And here, I mean, I guess I could use my plasma cutter and go from there, but I'm not entirely sure yet. So let's get this figured out, and then we can start cutting out shapes. If I was smart, I would just kind of stick with what I was gonna do and make sure I get that before anything else, but sometimes it's just not how I do it. Yeah, this is probably gonna come back to bite me, but I don't care. We'll be fine. Maybe this bunka will only be 2 inches wide instead of 2 1/4. We'll see what happens. And then let's see if we can get this guy in here somewhere. You know, this might just work. This tang, I'll have to weld a little chunk on there, but it's really not a big deal. I'm just going to continue this all the way out, and then we'll shape the tang at a later date. Okay, now let's see if I can get this actually cut out. That's going to be the hard part. Okay, next step. I got these cut out roughly. Typically I like to cut the shape out a little bit more, but these haven't been annealed yet and they need to be annealed. So that wasn't cutting too well through this steel. So anyway, that's a good sign, because if it's not cutting through the steel, it means that there's no mild steel there, or should mean that anyway. So I'm going to kick this guy on, and we're going to get the profile shaped on these. All right, so we've got these 3 knives profiled. And after I profiled these, I put them in ferric just to ensure that there's no canister or mild steel welds or whatever left on the edges or the spine. So since this video is about the guitar string bunka, I'm just going to focus on this guy right here. So as you can see, we've got a nice core right down the middle. And there's no mild steel that I can see. So we should be good. I mean, I think I can keep going. The only thing I haven't done is refine this choil area, but I'll get to that. That's not even close to important at the moment. All right, so we're just gonna pretend like these don't exist. I just wanted to show you that we got enough to get a lot of knives out of that billet. So next step on this guy is I've got to, if you can tell, this tang kind of like drops down just a little bit. Somehow I didn't grind that right. So I've got to heat this up and I've got to push it up a little bit just so it stays in line with the spine. So my spines on these knives, there's a curve on them. It's a slight curve, but what I like to do is make the shoulders perpendicular to this curve, where the apex of the curve would be right here. And to do that, I usually just use a small square, and you can see that that's pretty off, but we'll get it taken care of. So if I put this on here, I mean, this still needs to be cleaned up just a little bit. The spine does, so we're not exact where we need to be. So what I would typically do is put this on here, and then I'll get another straight edge and put it on there so it's perpendicular to that. And actually, maybe closer than I thought. For some reason, it looked like it took a dive down. But whatever the case, we'll get that all fixed up. Here, I found my little triangle. So yeah, as you can see, it still drops a little bit. You can see that's about center on there. And that, yeah, so it does drop. We need to raise that up just a hair. And that's easy. All I have to do is just heat that up and pop it on the anvil and hit it a few times and we're good. And then of course I've got to put the, square up the shoulders. I got to put the file guide on here where it needs to be and clean those up. And then also, you can see the horrible angles here in the choil area, the finger choil area. So that needs to be cleaned up. So 3 things, and then we'll get into surface grinding this. I'm kind of worried that I didn't smash this down enough because we're still pretty thick. I've got a decent amount to take off of the right and left hand sides, but if I go too much, I mean, the guitar string is gonna finish clear up here, which I guess wouldn't be horrible. But I think what I did was I either needed to just smash this down a little bit more, or I needed to go a little bit thinner on the core or thicker on the cladding. So you can kind of see where I was going with that in the first video. Is you want that core thin, but not so thin you can't keep it centered and you end up missing it on the edge side. So with this core all exposed, I'll be able to make my adjustments, do my grinding, all that, and then yeah, we're good. So like I was saying earlier, I usually like these to be between 1/8 of an inch and 3/32. It really just depends on how high up I want my bevel. But the bunkas I kind of like to do thinner and have a lower bevel, just so you don't have a big flat bevel all the way to the spine that's gonna have food release issues. So we'll figure out what I'm going to do with the bevel, and then go from there. All right, I did a thing. So as I was looking at this bunka, and I was talking about how there were some wobbles in here, which I was fine with. So I looked a little closer, and there was one that was just really thin. I don't know exactly how it got that thin, but it did. So I heated these back up and smashed them thinner, and now I think we're in a good spot. These are now thinner, and now I've got to go back through and redo my shape on these. So as you can see, that got really long. The width is still pretty, I mean, it's off a little bit, but it's actually really close to where it should be. So basically I've just got to take and reshape this edge, take the tip off here. I mean, I guess if I wanted a longer bunka, I could do that. And then again, we're just worried about that one, but just wanted to show you. Same thing here. Got more length out of that. A little more width. So, and then also actually got a little bit longer tang. So that's good, I guess. And then with the Gyudo, I've just got to go back through this, basically reshape the tip, and then we'll be good to go. So yeah, a minor setback, but I wanted to do it just so things turned out a little bit better. So back to profiling really quick, and then when I'm done with that, I will do my rough bevels and we'll get this thing heat treated. All right, as promised, oh yeah, I forgot. We're not worrying about these two knives, right? Okay, we'll do those off camera. Anyway, here is the bunka reshaped. Everything's thinned down a little bit. Spot up here is still a little narrow, but it's not thinner than what I would typically take this down to. So we'll be good. And even if I do need to, I can do a distal taper. I usually don't do any distal tapers on these knives, just because I want them thin and light, and the balance is usually good anyway. So I did a little rough grind just to thin the edge down a little bit, and popped a hole in here for the heat treat so I can hang these guys like this. So as far as the heat treat goes, so I'm heat treating this as Shirogami, even though, it's 1084 and nickel, basically. But the core is Shirogami, so that's how we're gonna heat treat this, because the rest of it really doesn't matter. So for Shirogami, I heat treat this almost identical to what I would do any simple steel, like a 1084 or a W2, a 125 CR1, a 26 C3. The 26 C3 and 125 CR1 they're almost identical to this. I think this has a little less chromium than the other ones, but still it's really close. So what I do, this needs to be normalized. Our normalization process is heat to 1650 degrees. I soak for 10 minutes. I pull it out and let it cool to black. And then I heat it up to 1500 degrees, hold it for 10 minutes, let it cool to black. Then I put it back in at 1350, soak for 10 minutes, pull it out, let it go to black, and then I will go 1475 degrees, and I usually hold that for 10 to 15 minutes. I'm not entirely sure if a soak is really necessary on Shirogami, but I do it anyway because it doesn't hurt. So soak, then I quench it in Parks 50, heat it up to like 100 degrees or so, somewhere around there, and then it'll be hardened. So for the temper, I put this in the temper oven at 350 degrees. I would rather do it at 325, but I don't know who's gonna buy this knife. It's not being made for a specific person. So if that person decides that they want to use this to pry open a tuna fish can or something like that, which kind of hurts my feelings. Anyway, if they decide to do that, it's not gonna break on them. 350 degrees is a better temp in case you wanna do something like that to your poor kitchen knives. Walmart makes really nice kitchen knife pry bars for like $10. So if you want to go get one of those, you can use that instead of this. So I'll slap a list up right here of all these numbers, the normalizations and all that, just in case you want to screenshot it or whatever. All right, we're ready to quench this guy. Been soaking for 10 minutes at 1475, normalized, all that stuff. Forgot not to use these long pins because I can't quite get this down as far as I'd like. We'll still be fine though. That looks pretty quenched to me. Just got to make sure it's straight. I don't know if you can tell, but it looks pretty good to me. Really good to me, actually. But just to be sure, I'll pop it in my high-tech straightening device. Also, it'll cool down a little quicker so I can put it in the temper. Alright, and then let's throw this guy in the temper oven. And we'll do that for 2 hours. Let it cool down, and then we'll do another cycle at 2 hours, and then the heat treat is done. Hey Siri, set timer for 2 hours.
2 hours, counting down.
Oh yeah, that's right. Those two don't count. Anyway, everything turned out really nice. Everything stayed straight, or really close to straight, within grinding range straight. So next step on this guy is that we've got to head on over to the grinder, and I really don't think you need to see me doing more grinding or explaining more grinding anyway. So really quick, I'll just tell you my process. I'm going to do a quick swipe and clean up all the superficial stuff, and then I'll put this on the surface grinder attachment and take it down to thickness. So I don't have to do too much on the thickness because like I did while forging, I took it down pretty close. To where I want to be, and you can see, you know, we're 1/8 of an inch, so I've only got to take off about a 32nd of an inch, get this down to about 0.10 is kind of where I want to be on this. So that shouldn't be too hard to do. The only thing I hate about the surface grinding attachment is that it tends to get warm really quick, and then it'll the heat will warp it, and then you have to try to get the warp out by heating the other side up. Anyway, it's manageable. So for any of you who have done the surface grinding, you probably know what I'm talking about. I mean, the same thing happens when you're grinding without the surface grinder attachment. If you let one side get a little too warm, I mean, not so warm that you ruin the heat treat, but just any warmth kind of wants to bend the steel. I mean, any heat really just wants to kind of bend the steel. All right, I got these things down to thickness, or sorry, this thing down to thickness. And somehow I've let myself run out of 36 grit. So luckily I've got plenty of 60 grit. So this should be all right. But anyway, I'm going to clean up the edges here, just on the flat platen. I do have a few marks that I have to get out. I didn't get quite thin enough. And then once I'm done here, I'm going to clean up the spine and etch it just to see where my core is at. So if I have to take some thickness off of one side to get the core more centered, then I can do that. All right, we're cleaned up a little bit. Still have a few spots that I got to work on getting out, but I want to check where my core is first, so we'll get that etched up. All right, let's see if I can get this up in here so that we can get a good shot of this. So it's looking pretty centered. There are some minor adjustments maybe. But, I mean, to me it looks pretty good. Flip this side over. I feel like that core is right down the middle. I mean, you can see some spots where it shifts over to one side a little bit more, but then shifts back to the other side a little bit more. So that actually will just cause a little more interest in the design up here. Little more wave instead of just a perfectly straight line. I mean, it wouldn't be anyway because of the design of this guitar string Damascus, but I mean, you can kind of see already what we're looking at. So it still has to be cleaned up a little bit. You can see up here that there's still some forge scale up here, so I just have to thin things down just a little bit more to get rid of that. And then it's on to the bevels. Quick progress report before I start grinding. So I've got this marked. I put some red Dykem on it and I marked my bevel line on each side, and then also marked my center line. So I know exactly how high my bevel needs to be and exactly how deep my bevel needs to be to get my edge perfectly centered. So let's get this thing ground. So I did find one 36 grit belt that had a little bit of life left in it. So I'm going to use this and hopefully get through all three of these knives with it. If not, it's just, I mean, the 60 grit's not horrible. Just takes a little bit longer. So let me get some light. Some more light on here so I can see my center line. And then slap my old man glasses on so I can also see my center line. And away we go. Again, sorry about the audio. I know it's going to cut out a little bit. All right, I'm getting this thing cleaned up on the 4x36 belt sander. I use this just to make sure that my bevels are nice and clean and my edge is nice and even, which, I mean, it's straight and really close to the same thickness all the way down. But this thing really makes a difference. The only thing you have to be wary about doing it with this is it's really easy to overheat the edge. So you got to make quick passes and make sure to feel your edge and cool down often. And it does a really good job. I'm eventually going to upgrade to a 6x48 because, as you might have heard, this thing sounds like it's going to break at any moment. And for the 4x36, it seems like you have fewer options in belts. So probably just do like the Harbor Freight guy. It seems like it's a pretty decent one. So I don't know, we'll see. But anyway, I'm going to keep doing this and then we'll get this thing etched. So before I do an etch on this and get a sneak peek of what the pattern looks like, I just kind of want to tell you where I'm at on this knife right now, because this will be the end of the video, because this was just about the shaping basically. We've got this sanded up to 220 grit, and I still need to round the corners on the back, round the corners on the choil, and clean that up. Sand up to 400 or 600 grit. I guess it just depends on how I'm feeling that day. Because to me, 400 and 600, they come out pretty close to the same finish. As some of you may know, I'm not a fan of mirror polish. I'll probably never do a mirror polish, and I don't know, I won't say never because it's always possible. But anyway, the next step is the handle. So the next video is going to be how I do my guitar fretboard handles, and then after that, we've just got to do those things that I mentioned, clean everything up, get everything put together, put my mark on it and all that good stuff. But for now, I'm just going to etch this so we can see what it looks like. And then we'll wrap this video up and get on to the next. And there's a quick etch to show why I absolutely love this Damascus pattern. So sorry about the lights, but yeah, you can see it's extremely unique. I don't know any other way to get this pattern beside the guitar strings. That's kind of the cool thing about canisters, is that you get some really unique patterns out of them. So you can see, you know, everything's pretty centered. It's really close. It's a little lower on this side than this side, but I mean, I can live with that. So with that, we're done here. Got the shaping, everything, and we're ready for the handle. So next video, I'll show you how I go about building my guitar fretboard handles to kind of bring this whole theme together. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, whatever it is, just leave them down in the comments. And if you're interested in buying a t-shirt or something like that, there's also links down below. I've ordered a few shirts just to see the quality and actually like them, so I wear them quite often. The shirts are pretty decent, so if you're considering maybe supporting the channel and, you know, getting something out of it, that's a good way. But anyway, as always, I appreciate you stopping by and spending a little time with me, and we will see you in the next video.